It's funny because you never know how life goes. You know, we have our plans, you know what I'm saying? And our plans, you know, it's a Proverbs 60, 16 and 9, and I'm paraphrasing, but it says, hey, we got our own plans, but God, He has another plan. And it's literally saying we have to make our adjustments to God instead of, scratch my agenda, what I thought I was going to do. Because what I thought I was going to do wasn't what He wanted to do. It just may have been a good idea. Just wasn't a God idea. Because He knows His thoughts towards us. And He doesn't change His mind. He does not change His mind. He already knows that He has plans. And so since He has a plan for our life, He's like, I'm going to drift you to my plan. And sometimes what He has to do is, He has to create events that direct us towards His plan for our lives. Because my plan looks like it might work, but it may lead me to destruction. Or my plan, it appears to be a thing to do, but someone else is attached to my plan. And if I don't do my part when I'm supposed to do my part, someone else is going to miss what God's plan for his life. See, because God has a thought for my life, and then God has a plan for your life, and some parts of your plan is connected to my plan. And if you're not where you're supposed to be, you're going to miss me. I'm going to miss a part of me. Genesis 28, 10. Genesis 28, 10. Excuse me. It says, now Jacob went out from Bathsheba and went Beersheba. I said Bathsheba. I'm sorry, that's a person. That's not a place. It says Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. So he came to a place and stayed there all night because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and put it at his head. And he lay down at that place to sleep. And then he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached to heaven. And there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham, your father, and God of Isaac. And the land which you lie, I will give to you and your descendants. And your descendants shall be the dust of the earth. Remember dust. And you shall spread abroad to the west and the east, to the north and the south, and in you and your seed all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and I will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until you have done what I have spoken.
Wow.
Transformations. You still in transformation. I don't know which part this is now. But this gonna be like a sub-series. And let's just call it He's Scared Now. He's scared now. So let's run back. We talked about Abraham some time ago.
Because we trust in God. I got it. Okay.
Yeah. So, remember last week? Lord, I trust you. It's okay. Because He's scared now. We'll go back a couple of Sundays ago. We talked about Abraham. Abraham, God speaks to Abraham. He says to Abraham, Abraham, get from around there. Get from your family, get your kindred. He says, go to a place where I will tell you. He says, and I will make you a great nation. He says, and your children shall be the sand, like the sand of the earth, and the stars in the sky. And Abram does it. His name changed to Abraham because God says to him, He says, hey, look, your name it works, but we're going to add to it. See, because what I noticed about God is God does not change his word. But what is awesome is, though, is he will make an addendum and not an amendment on his word over our lives. See, because an amendment means I'm going to change it because it wasn't right. An addendum is when I'm going to add to it. Because you know God is extra. So he'll do exceedingly and abundantly above all we ask or think. And so what I was thinking, God looks at me and says, what you were thinking, it's okay, but it's not enough. He says, because my thoughts are really big, because my thoughts towards you are bigger than your thoughts towards you. So what I have to do is I have to amend it. This word over you, Abram. He says, because Abram is a good name, it means exalted father. He says, but you're bigger than that. Ooh. He says, I'm going to make you the father of many nations. And even though Abraham does not have a whole slew of kids like God could have done, instead what God does is he has two sons. One of the promise and one because Abram tried to help God. Because like I said, you know, we have this habit, we making plans, and our plans aren't God's plans. You know, see, because when I try to do my plan, and I think this is a good idea, but it's not God's idea, it's saying that God's idea is not working. I'm not trusting God. And my good idea sometimes it looks like it's right, but it's not right because it's an act of unbelief. Abram's act of unbelief personified, and it's like it becomes a living problem in his household. And so God gives Abraham, he says, look, you gotta let him go. And so he sends Ishmael out because Ishmael wasn't the promise, and he has Isaac in his house, and Isaac is the one child, and God even tells Abraham, he says, to offer him up because I want to see where your heart is. You know, because it's always a heart issue, right? Yeah. Everything about us is a heart issue. And God always wants to see where our hearts are. Sometimes it's not that he wants us to see where our hearts are because he knows everything. So he knows where my heart is. He wants me to see where my heart is. Wow. Every instance with God is where God is showing me. He's like, I literally have to show you. See, because your testing is not because I don't know. Your testing is because you don't know. He says, Sean, I got to show you so that you can make corrections. Because it's impossible to convert into something if you don't know what you're converting from into. Jesus. And if I am just standing still, spinning wheels, but not going anywhere, there's no conversion into movement. And God says, I need to see movement. I'm not a stagnant God. I'm not like still water that's just sitting in some place getting funky. Because you ever smelled stale water? It's because it wasn't moving. But those waters that run down those rocks are changed. And sometimes God will put us in a rocky place to clean us up. Wow. That's what the movement is for. See, we like to stay on the mountaintop, but the mountaintop doesn't produce anything. It's cold up there. It does. And so sometimes God has got to sit a little heat on us. Let the ice caps roll down, and we just roll over those rocks because in the valley is where we're useful. So we want to stay on the top to be seen, but it's in the valley where everything really grows. It's in the valley where you are a nourishment to someone else. And someone said, I don't want to be in the valley because in the valley it gets dark down there. Yeah. Sometimes it gets a little cool down there. Sometimes because of where it's sitting, it's in a spot where no one notices me. Come on. God says, your real noticing doesn't have to be in that spot. Sometimes you need to be used and not noticed. Right. Our world is so narcissistic. You know what I'm saying? Everything got to be about me, so I have to have a name. Have to be seen. Got to be heard. You ever been in a space where sometimes you get so tired of this one person talking over top of every person? And then when you're holding a conversation, they have to be so right that they have to talk louder than the other person. Get everything else. And like loud makes you right. Yeah. Wrong. Sometimes loud just proves that you're wrong. Loud proves that I'm ignorant and I don't know. And sometimes the worst thing about that is, though, that's a situation of learning. But instead of me learning because I'm not listening, that learning requires listening. And sometimes I got to pause, be quiet, and listen, because ignorance is different from stupidity. Ignorance is when you don't know. Stupidity is is when I refuse to know.
Come on.
Wow.
Come on, say it again,
Someone
sir.
is
Say
telling
that
us-
again, sir. Woo!
You ever catch the tape because sometimes I can't remember some stuff. Ignorance is when I just don't know. Stupidity is when I refuse to know. That's the reason why God makes this move on our lives for transformation, because he wants us to transform into likeness of his son. We've been living in a world where they've been telling us all of our lives, nobody can do that but Jesus. And Jesus says, those 3.5 years while I was in ministry, and it's recorded, is because I want you to do what I have done. I said, greater works shall you do because I go to the Father. I go to the Father, I offer up the offering, and then I come back on the day of Pentecost, and I want to dwell in you so that I can direct you into you. See, most of the time, we don't have any direction into ourselves. What we want to do is what we want to do, and I need some direction. Children need direction. Without direction, there's a problem. Why? Because we need correction. If we don't correct something, we create something. Your kid is cussing. If I laugh at him, I give him the okay. When I'm giving him the okay, I've given him license to do more of it.
Yeah.
Who's at fault? I'm at fault because I have not corrected him. And we need the Spirit of God to correct us, to direct us, to reveal God to us, and to reveal us to us. And so what God does is he says, I want to direct you in this thing. We see in the script, Jacob lays himself down on a stone. Jacob is in a rock and a hard place. See, because Jacob is Abraham's grandson. His dad, Isaac, only had 2 sons, he and Esau. And when they were born, Jacob came out of the womb grabbing his brother's foot. And his father might have thought it was funny, so he calls him Jacob. And Jacob literally means heel catcher, like thief, like con artist. You know, that's not, I'd imagine Isaac thought light of it, like say, I'm just, it's not that big. But names are extremely important.
Yeah. What you listen.
What you call me, what you listen to, because you are labeling me. If you call mustard ketchup, before you know it, mustard is going to change colors. It's not going to be yellow anymore, it's going to be red anymore. The ingredients is going to change because it matters what you call.
The ingredients are going to change.
I literally believe this, that once we are saved and we catch what God is saying about us, our very genes modify. That God supernaturally, genetically modifies me by what I accept, by what he's calling me. So Jacob, named by his daddy, calls him Jacob. The crazy thing is Jacob's maternal history is kind of funny, and they've been known to be tricksters. So Isaac might have thought it was funny, say, maybe just like your mother's people.
Wow.
And y'all know how that goes, man.
Yeah.
When you start doing that, before you know it, it personifies in that child. And even though it starts off that as a baby, while you're talking that stuff into that child,
Jesus.
it shapes
It's growing with them.
the personality, the very person of that child. He hold him, look at you, Jacob. You think you're saying something good, you're saying something bad. And see, this is how sin is so slick, right? It doesn't look so bad. I don't really mean anything by it. Whether you meant anything by it or not, it's not the issue. The issue is that's not what God wants that to be. And so Jacob has to live with that. And so Jacob not only has this issue, but Jacob comes from an awesome paternal history. His daddy is Abraham. And Abraham was a good man. And when you have somebody in your family like that, that somehow or another that says to me that I have a responsibility of excellence. Abraham started something. And so Abraham initiated the people that we know as Israel. Abraham was the initiator of what God was going to do next in humanity. We ain't just talking about the Jews. We're talking about us, because Abraham, when he was chosen by God to be the beginning, it wasn't even about just them. It was about us. See, because he's like, God says, I'm creating a bloodline, and I need somebody that would do what I say, that would trust what I say, because if you can start it, I can get this thing rolling, and before you know it, I'm going to step in it, and I'll become God in man, and I'll redeem all of mankind. See, we often say, Israel is God's chosen people, like God got favorites. No, that's not what the case is. Israel is God's chosen people because he wanted to choose one person to save the entire world. We look like God's got favorites. God doesn't have favorites. God's got chosen ones to use. And so, and Abraham initiates it. And Jacob has to deal with the dichotomy of who he is and who they say he is. You know what I mean? So sometimes you got people around here that don't know what to call you. They don't even know what they're looking at. But his mother, while she was pregnant with him. See, sometimes we got to seek God when something is at the nuclear stage. Before you can even say what it is, I can tell what it is, I got to ask God, what actually is this? What is this? And while they were pregnant in the womb, and they was in there fighting, she looks at it. She said, Lord, what is going on? And he says, you have two nations in your womb. He says, and the older shall serve the younger. And so she got the revelation. But he wasn't named by the person that got the revelation. He was named by the person that was ignorant of what God was doing. And so there's a point there. It's like, don't let someone who is ignorant of what God is doing in your life direct your opinions about who you are and what God is doing in your life. They haven't gotten the memo. See, most of the time, that's what takes place. And you know why he's done this? Because the enemy has done this. You know why he's done this? Because he's scared. He literally doesn't know everything, but he knows the nature of God and that God can do something out of nothing, and God is doing something right there. I ain't got all of it, but I know he's doing something because I can see it. And so the enemy looks at Jacob's life, and he's trying to cut Jacob off because before Jacob can actually be Israel. See, what God saw and what Isaac saw are two different things. And sometimes God will step inside the situation and he'll start to nudge it. He starts to create events that pushes us to destiny. And see, and while Jacob was young, Jacob couldn't put his hand on why he liked to put his hands on things.
Here it is. Come on, Sarah.
You know what I'm saying?
Make that make sense.
See,
Wow. Wow.
can I do it in two? I'll come back to part of it. Look, so Jacob, by nature, always was after things. Esau got it because Esau was the first. But sometimes God does things untraditional. We set traditions so that we can make sense for our lives. And God says, your traditions have made the word of God of none effect. We making it so that it's got to be cookie cutter. And God says, I'm bigger than cookies. that I'll cut this thing the way I want to cut it. And sometimes I don't want to cut it. I just want it to be raw and big. He looks, Esau, by right, was the firstborn. So he would have gotten 2/3 of everything his father had. Jacob would get the other third. Esau, by right, will be the leader of the clan. But Esau, by nature, was not that type of man. Esau was rough and tumble. He was the type of dude that liked to hunt, but he didn't really pay attention to the things of God. He couldn't value it. Let's draw one point right there. Let's stop right there. value system. We have to be watching what we value and make sure that we value things properly. See, what Esau had, he didn't value. What Esau had, Jacob valued. Some people make Jacob to be a thief, but Jacob understood what Esau didn't understand. This is important.
Come on, sir.
That if you don't do this right, it'll be lost forever. And this is not what God is saying. And if you can't value it, you will waste it. That's the reason why we don't cast our pearls to swine, because swine do not value what God has valued. And so I can't waste me in a place where people can't. They don't know me.
Don't waste it.
And so God looks at
Sir, you preaching.
Jacob's life. He says, it looks like hardships, but I'm creating events that's gonna put you in the place. He says, but I can see that you got it. Why? See, everybody else mad because Jacob stole Esau's blessing and his birthright. Esau's mad. Isaac realized I can't take it back. He says, one thing I got from God is once you issue something, you cannot take that back. I've given you my word, it belongs to you. Yeah, you might have tricked me, but now it belongs to you. See, because his mama got inside the situation. You have to have some people in your corner that know what God wants for you. We have to surround ourselves with people that have prophetic eyes. And even if they can't quite see it, they will seek God for it. You see what I'm saying? If all your friends don't pray, it's time to get in set up circle. Because they ain't no good to you. But I got a set of friends. If I say, hey man, I need you, you know what they're going to start doing? Pray. Somebody might be on the phone and somebody just might show up and say, I'll be there. I will be there in about 30 minutes.
Yeah, show up.
They'll show up and they'll pray. And then we'll get together on Monday nights and we'll talk about it. And before you know it, all of a sudden the burden is so much more lighter. I got me a circle. Make sure that your circle helps to support your cycles. Because your cycles are going to shift according to your circle.
Seasons. You better come on, sir.
There are seasons, exactly. And so the people that are in your circle are in your season. And they will shift in the seasons of your life. And all of us are growing together.
Come on.
He's affecting me, and I'm affecting him, and we are getting to where God is calling me. He is getting to where God is calling him, and we're getting there. And you know what? You know what? He's on my side, saying, hey, don't worry about that, because he's just scared. See, a bully only bullies because he's intimidating himself. That's to fake me out. He's got to convince me that I'm not me, so that I don't be me, because as long as I'm me, then he can't really be who he thinks he has to be. And so the enemy is bullying. But what God is doing is saying, look, I'm going to take him and what he's doing, and I'm going to push you into what I'm doing. He takes Jacob's situation. Jacob's going through stuff, and he has to run from Esau because his mama said, hey, look, your father's getting old, and he's blind. See, I'm afraid the problem, I hate to be a hard judge on Isaac, but I'm afraid the problem is Isaac had been blind longer than before his eyes started.
Oh, sir. He couldn't see alone.
Couldn't see with vision.
Couldn't see.
Okay. Oh, no. Wow.
Rebecca knew to pray. You can't see unless you pray. Let's stop thinking I'm going to be a prophet if I can't see what. Because I'm not going to see unless he tells me. And he's not going to tell me unless I walk to him and say, God, show me. You know what I mean? I will say that God will talk to me, but I better be talking to God too. That better be a give and take. That when we pray, prayer is not a monologue. Lord, I need, Lord, I need, and Lord, I need, and Lord, I need, and Lord, I need. Nah, prayer is a dialogue, and I can't learn unless I'm listening. That's what meditation is for. There has to be a moment of meditation so that it shifts my thinking, so that my thinking is transformed. Because as a man Think it.
So is he.
So is
Him.
So, right here on this pillow, I'm skipping across, and y'all bring me back. He's on this pillow, a rock in a hard place, because his brother wants to kill him because he stole everything his brother really had that was really worth anything. But he couldn't value it anyway, because if he valued it, he would have put it in a place where it wouldn't have been lost. If you want something, you take care of it. If you want something, you guard it. I'm going to switch to another story and come right back. Boaz, when he is there in the threshing room, and Ruth is there to come to him, she goes where he is guarding his harvest.
Wow.
You have to guard the things that are valuable, that are of God, because that's your harvest. See, Esau was so misdirected that he didn't even know to guard what God really had for him. Jacob knew to have it. He understood possession. And so when he steals it, Rebecca shows him how to do it. You need some people in your life that can show you how to do stuff. You need a strategist in your life that can show you, he say, look, I'm going to show you because I've been there before. That there's a requirement of our lives to be around folk that can teach you, that can mentor you. I'm making a point to talk to other people so they can talk to me. I create conversation so that they can tell me something. I pick their brains on purpose. I slip in there kind of sly like just making conversation because I know they got something good. And what I learned is this, right? Manhood is not something you just do by getting older.
No.
Manhood is what you do when you draw from people around you. And so I take a piece of him, and I take a piece of him, and I take a piece of him, and I take a piece of him because they got parts that I need. And so Rebecca pours into Jacob's life. But while she's doing it, she says, I'm going to help you do this. You need some people in your life that's going to help you do something. Instead of watching you make mistakes. And Rebecca is there, and even though it doesn't look right,
She's still there.
And there's certain loyalty that's in the circle. That's loyal to the cause of God. See, she was so loyal to God that she broke the loyalty between her husband. I want a person that's in my circle, and I would love for them to be loyal to me, but I'd rather for them to be loyal to God. Because if they're loyal to God, then if they're in the right place, then I can know how to redirect. And so Rebecca shows him how to do it. She says, I'm going to help you. I'm going to cook the food. You go get the lamb. I'm going to cook it so good that he's going to think it's venison, and it's really going to be lamb. They don't taste the same, y'all. She knows how to do it. And so she said, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take the skins and put them on your wrist, and when he touches you, it's going to feel like. See, Isaac had the mistake of living by his senses. What it feels like. Our feelings will fool us every time. I cannot get caught in my feelings because my feelings are not what is. He felt like Esau, but he was Jacob. It felt like, but it wasn't. And so, because he's blind, because he can't see, he's living off his feelings, and he has gotten it wrong.
Wow.
And Jacob, for the first time, gets what he wants from his father. See, because all his life, his father favored his brother and treated him like a mama's boy. You just like your mama's people. You a mama's boy, and you always around the house doing mama stuff. And the first time he gets the love from his father that he wanted.
Wow.
and he's gotten it. And when his brother comes back and says, you already gave it away? Yeah. But you didn't know what you was getting anyway. And you were just going to waste it anyway. And Jacob realizes he has to run now. So, and so at this pillow, he sees something. He's there, and he sees angels ascending and descending. He's like, yeah, Jacob. He says, all your life, they've been telling you, you are Jacob. You've been mislabeled. He says, this is how powerful I am in your life. He says, right while you sleeping, I'm going to show you something. All your life, I've been having you covered. See, because those angels aren't coming down and going up. They've been going up and coming down. So all your life, while
Oh, up and down. Come on.
they've been right there with you. They've been going up and coming back down to you. That they've been in your life watching you while you've been sleeping, while you've been doing whatever you've been doing, while you've been feeling like you're not accepted. All your life you've been accepted. It's just, but see, the thing about this is, right, sometimes in order to get what God has called for you, that means you might have to relocate.
Wow.
Because the promise is often based off of proximity. That I need to be in the place where the blessing is. And sometimes I have to initiate the blessing by the movement. See, Jacob has gotten the blessing. But Jacob is not who he is yet. God can save me, but there still has to be a conversion in me. I got to change. Yeah. You can anoint me to be king, but I still need some training.
Yeah.
You can anoint me to be priest of a clan, but I still need some training. What looked like a ripoff, God was showing Jacob who he was. Right there at the dream, Jacob starts to dream, and God says, yep, I'm with you. He says, and I'm going to make this declaration over your life. He says to you, he says to him, he says, wherever you go, I'm going to be there. He says, and remember what I told your grandfather? He says, I'm about to make an amendment. I'm going to correct myself. He's going to make an addendum. See, he told Abraham, he said, I'm going to make them the same. He told Jacob, I'm going to make you the dust. See, if you know anything, sand particles are smaller than dust. Sand particles are bigger than dust particles. That dust particles are so small that you can't even put them together. That when they come together in pieces, you can't see one from the other. They're so teeny. So you can put more in the space. He's saying this. He said, Jacob, I'm about to make it bigger than what I told Abraham. Because you know why? He says, because I can do it. He says, I made it this. He said, I'm not changing it. I'm making it better. He says, I'm going to do exceedingly and abundantly above all you ask and think. He says, but what I need for you to do is stop shrinking to make other folk comfortable. Stop shrinking to make everybody else feel better about themselves. He just scared. He says, don't overly value people's opinions that don't know what they're talking about. So we live in a world, everybody talking, they don't even know what they're talking about. They talking some good game, they don't know what they're talking about. If you listen to them really good, you realize it's a whole bunch of sound bites. They take a piece of this and a piece of this, they put it together and they call it truth, but it's a lie. See, you only need a little bit of truth to make a really good lie. But it's still a lie once you add the lie to it. And so stop valuing these opinions about people that don't know what they're talking about. I'm sorry, son. Your daddy didn't know what he was talking about. I'm going to go ahead and get to the other part so we close up. Jacob goes through so much after this. He has been running for years. He gets to Laban's house. He finds the woman of his dreams and works for her for 7 years, only to wake up in the morning after a marriage ceremony and say, hey, okie doke, this Leah. I ain't saying she's ugly, but I ain't want that one.
I ain't saying she's cute. I ain't saying she's ugly, but I ain't saying she's cute.
He said, well, you know I couldn't give you the youngest before the oldest. He said, so what I'm going to have to do is you work another 7, and I give it to you. See, some people, they're connected to you because of the blessing that you bring on their lives. And so when they realize that they get something out of the deal with you being around, they're going to try to get all they can get. They're going to milk it. Laban was milking it because what was going on was, while Jacob was there, because God's blessing was over Jacob's life, Laban was being blessed because of his presence.
Just because you're there.
Just because, see, when God told Jacob, he said, I'm going to be with you wherever you are, He said, see, I'm not faking. He said, the Laban didn't have what he had at first until you got there. He said, so Laban is trying to benefit off of your presence. Look, there are going to be people in your life that are there just to benefit off of your presence.
Wow.
Don't trip off of it, because somewhere in there, it's a lesson. See, a few weeks ago, I was looking at kind of what we're doing, and for a second, I felt like a failure. It felt like it's like, man, I'm trying so hard, and I'm not doing. God said, hey, Sean. I said, man, shut up. He said, you asked me to teach you. I said, yeah. He said, well, you don't learn from the stuff you do right. You learn from the stuff you do wrong. He says, this is trial and error.
Okay.
He said, so what you are doing is, those aren't losses, those are lessons. And so you are learning from your losses. That's not necessarily losing. He says, just take those as gains. And so Jacob is there at Laban's house. It looks like he's losing. and Laban's gaining. He said, but it's only a matter of time. And when that thing flipped, he gets Rachel. Then all of a sudden he works a few years, and they're fighting. They love him so much, they're fighting to have kids to have his favor. And God's doing what God is doing. He says, because look, your daddy only had 2, look how many you got. You already had 10. And when he got that 10th one, Joseph, he says, time to go. So there are places in our lives, times in our lives, when we realize that when it's time to shift into another era in our lives, and we got to make the transfer, it's time to go. Jacob realizes it's time to go, and he starts to head back. He says, I got to head back. But even though this is God's cause, I want to make it right with my brother. Because y'all know forgiveness is the gift you give yourself. And when I'm wrong, I need to go and make it right. Reconciliation. I got to go back and make that thing right. And so on the way back, he lines up his family accordingly. And he says, y'all stay here on the side. And he goes over, and right there, he meets God. He meets God. And when he meets God, God says, yep, you about to meet you. So you was in the training ground all the time. You thought you was losing. He said, look, I'm about to show you who you really are. He says, what's your name? See, Jacob, when he met God, he realized it's time to grab this. When God steps in your life, it's time to grab it. It's time, when God starts to talk, it's time to grab what God is saying, because it's overly so important, so that once he starts to talk, it's time for me to grab that thing. Because if I don't grab that thing, I'm going to miss it, and it's going to escape me. And so don't let it escape you. The minute that God starts to do some stuff in your life, God starts to talk, God starts to reveal, grab it and hold on to it. See, the minute Jacob was always so misunderstood. They called him a thief, but he was really a grappler. Andre knows it. A wrestler. And see, a grappler, a real wrestler, ain't no right, Alan. They know how to grip you. And when they grip you, they can make...
already prepared for it.
His whole life, he's been wrestling with things. And by the time he gets to this place, he has wrestled so long that he's a professional man. And so when he grabs God, knowing he can't beat God, God's like to play with it. He says, I'm only doing this with you because I'm changing you. I'm doing this with you because once you leave from this wrestling match, you'll never walk the same. Everybody around you going to look at you and think you're weak after you walk this wrestling match. He said, but that's going to be the strength of you. See, Jacob wrestled with the angels and wrestled with the angel of God. That's literally God he's wrestling with. They call it a theophany. That's when God shows up. That's God, theophany, show up. So God shows up and he's wrestling with Jacob. And while he's wrestling with Jacob, what's your name? And he said, Jacob. No, it's not. He says, don't even ask you that no more. He said, your name is Israel. You are a prince who have power of God and shall prevail. He says, I'm here to reveal it all to you. He says, from the beginning, I've been in your life all your life. He says, I've been doing it. He says, because I want to bring you to a place. See, because that thing I said to you way back there, he says, that dust, we're going to make that happen. He says, but you have got to answer to something else. Stop answering to what they've been calling you, because it's not your name. Know who you are. Know whose you are. Chase that thing. Chase it. Don't stop seeking after it. Don't stop wrestling with this thing. He says, because I'm transforming you. He touches Jacob in the hollow of his thigh, and Jacob has to walk on a staff for the rest of his life. Shrinks his hip. He says he walks different, and he got a new name. See, I'm afraid sometimes in Christendom, we get saved, but we don't walk no different. There's a problem. And I know it's a process. But we have got to learn how to love the process.
Okay.
Even if the process is uncomfortable.
Okay.
See, the process is changing you. And this metamorphosis starts off, most cases, with an ugly stage. A caterpillar, y'all know it's ugly. You know, and for years I used to stomp on them and say, so ugly. And the thing about it is this, right?
Well, what do they produce?
Exactly. And so sometimes out of ignorance, people are stomping on caterpillars. Before they become who they become. See, and a caterpillar is ugly. And before he even gets beautiful, he goes to another uglier stage. He is wrapped in a cocoon. And it is suffocating, it seems. It seems. But there is a metamorphosis that is taking place in the cocoon. This, you know, you're in the cocoon and I'm changing and it doesn't look like me and I'm cramped up and I'm isolated. But God is doing something. We have to learn to love the process even if the process is not fun. See, because while he's in his cocoon, he's enlarging it. And sometimes we've got to outgrow what we've grown to. Outgrow your growth. That's another point. That I've got to unlearn some things that I've learned. I've got to keep on growing. And then once I've grown here, I've got to even outgrow that because the sign says stop, not stay. And so the caterpillar outgrows the cocoon. He says, but this part, you're going to have to fight for. See, Jacob understood that this next part, you got to fight for this. See, an enemy has done this. He's scared, but I want you to hold on to another part. You got to fight for this. See, so that in his own cocoon, he has to fight his way out. No one can let him out. He's got to kick and fight because if he doesn't kick and fight, he'll never fly. The next flight in your life depends on how well you're willing to fight in the spirit for your destiny, for who God has called you. And some of that fight is going to be right here in your mind, where you have to cast down every vain imagination that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. See, Isaac had called Jacob so long, that's all we ever known. God calls Jacob Israel, and I guarantee for the rest of Jacob's life, he had to remind myself, your name is Israel, your name is Israel, your name is Israel, your name is Israel. Why? Because I am used to being called Jacob. And people that didn't know God changed his name would say, hey, Jacob. And he had to learn how to stop answering to it. He said, I apologize, but I go by Israel now. Sometimes it's okay to check people when they call you that name or call you that person that you were. That's not my name anymore. I'm going to close with this part because I could go on. But I'm going to say this. Decisions. There are going to be decisions that you would want to take place in your life. Make sure that God is telling you to make that decision. I was praying about something a few weeks ago. And I asked a friend, I said, man, what you think? He said, doesn't really matter what I think. He said, what does God think? He says, what does God think? He said, it could work that way or it could work that way. He said, but what does God think? Because that's going to determine what's going to take place. Look, if Abraham didn't make the right decision, there would be no Jacob. There would be no Israel. If Israel had made the right decision, there would have been no Judah. If Judah had made the right decision, there wouldn't have been. God was lining up his plan with their lives. From this point forward, your decisions don't just affect you, they affect everything that's connected to you. So that your decision, I can't make a selfish decision ever again in my life. Why? Because I'm not just making a decision for me. I'm making a decision for somebody else. Don't shrink. Focus on what you can control. Trust God and know that you belong to him. And all that other stuff that's in your past, that's not your name. And the reason why it happened, trying to figure out why that happened, why it wasn't going away, it's because he's scared. He's got an idea that God's going to do something in your life. If God's got an idea that he's going to do something in your life, guess what? Let's go to the end of that word. It says, and I will not leave you until I have done what I've spoken unto you. God is speaking to your life right now, and I'm closing. And he's saying, I will not leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you. And I'm adding to what I've said. I know I said that to them, but guess what? I'm going to exceed that. You know I'm extra. You know I exceed expectations. That's what you thought, but I'm so big I can't help myself. I'm just, I'm bigger than your problem, so I'm going to just flood your problem with me so much so that it just wash it all away. And he's saying, and I'm not going to stop until I said, I've done what I've said. My word will not return unto me void, but will do what I sent it. That it's not going to come back and say, I tried, but it wouldn't work. No, he said, you know why? He said, my word ain't going to come back and say, I tried, but it wasn't working. He said, because I am the word. That was me in there. That was me in there fixing that. And he's saying, I'm going to do it. He's looking at me, he said, well, what I need you to do is you got to keep your side of the deal. Can you keep the side of the deal when you trust me? Can you keep the side of the deal when it doesn't look right, when it's dark and ugly, that you can say in that cocoon, it's okay, God. It's all right. I trust you. And can you see yourself flying when you get out of there? Because you're going to fight your way out to fly. He says, but guess what? The fight is giving you the strength to do what I purposed you to do. That fight, you've been fighting in your sleep against the enemy. He says that fight is going to give you the strength to do what I purposed you to do. All of your life, you have had events. And God says, I'm leading up to the place where I'm changing your name. He says, at the change of your name, everything around you, everything that's connected to you, every person that's connected to you is going to be changed by your decision. And he says, fight. He says, he's scared, you fight. He's scared, you fight. He says, now my strength is made perfect in your weakness. You feel like you're weak. He says, watch and see what takes place. The cocoon is only for a season. It's not going to be forever. It won't always be like this.